It's not really a matter of your loved ones becoming more precious to you, because they're as precious as they can be. It's that you just notice more. You don't want to miss anything.
Amid the windswept hills of Malibu stands a mansion so silent it sends chills down your spine. It was once the warm and bustling home of Michael Landon, the most exemplary father ever to grace American television screens. But now, the mansion holds nothing but emptiness and the haunting sound of the wind sweeping through its cold courtyard. Behind that gentle, reassuring smile lay a life fractured by hidden cracks, infidelity, backstage scandals, and the final years spent fighting in quiet despair. The man who once made all of America believe in the beauty of family happiness was, in truth, carrying within him shadows he could never escape. And now, within the stillness of that somber Malibu estate, faint traces remain echoes of a truth the world has never been told. During the golden age of American television, Michael Landon was the face everyone trusted, the Western hero, the Prairie father, the angel of kindness. He was the star of 3 legendary series, Bonanza, Little House on the Prairie, and Highway to Heaven, shows that made him a television icon for more than 2 decades. Whenever he appeared on screen, audiences felt comforted, reassured that somewhere there still existed a world where fathers listened and where goodness never died. Off-screen, he lived much as he acted, often renting 18-wheel trucks, loading them with food, and personally delivering it to the poor, quietly, as if kindness never needed an audience. He was also famous for his gentle way with children on set, always ending filming early so they could go home, reading bedtime stories himself during late-night shoots, and affectionately calling the young actors "my kids" in a voice warm enough to make it sound real. But behind that image was another man complex, lonely, and deeply fractured. In 1979, at the height of Little House on the Prairie, 43-year-old Michael Landon became entangled in a scandal, an affair that broke out while he still had a wife and 7 children. On the Little House set, Landon began to notice Cindy Clerico, a production assistant just 18 years old, with an innocent smile and eyes that followed him from afar. At first, it was only small talk. She asked about lighting, about camera angles, and he smiled as he explained. But soon, the conversations grew longer. The two began lingering after filming, long after the crew had gone home. In the soft Malibu afternoon, the line between right and wrong blurred, and Landon knew he had just stepped through a door he could never return from. Rumors spread like wildfire across dry fields. The crew was stunned. The man they saw as a father figure, the one who preached faith and sacrifice, was now caught up in a forbidden love affair with a woman nearly 20 years younger. Soon, the secret was no longer a secret. Landon and Cindy appeared together, hand in hand, beneath the flashbulbs of the press. Hollywood was shaken. The public was outraged. The media called it the moral shock of the decade. The image of television's most perfect father collapsed within a single season. Melissa Gilbert, the little girl who played Laura and once saw Landon as her real father, cried and fell silent. She refused to take his calls. She stopped visiting his house at Christmas. "I don't know who he is anymore," she later said, a sentence that seemed to close the door on her own childhood. Meanwhile, Lynn No, his wife of 19 years, the mother of his 7 children, was left to endure public humiliation. The marriage crumbled in a storm of anger and betrayal. Once, in a fit of rage, she hurled a vodka bottle straight at Landon's head. In 1982, the divorce was finalized, but along with it, an entire moral legend came crashing down. The consequences came faster than anyone could have predicted. He lost a string of endorsement deals and was doubted by NBC executives over his ability to continue playing ideal father roles. In the network's meeting rooms, people whispered, "How can audiences still believe in Charles Ingalls when, in real life, he's betrayed his own family?" But Landon did not collapse. In 1983, he married Cindy Clerico, the woman who had once been the scandal of his life and kept writing, directing, and producing as if nothing had happened. They had 2 children, and Cindy remained by his side until his very last day, yet the public's eyes were never the same again. When Landon stepped onto a set, no one saw America's father anymore, only a man carrying quiet regret, trying to hold on to the faint glimmer of light still left in his own soul. However, that was only the surface of the story. In the 2021 memoir Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, a witness decided to speak up, and what she revealed completely shattered Landon's image. Grassel recalled that Landon often bragged about his sex life, from the miraculous effects of bee pollen on older men to crude, explicit talk about the human body. He spoke of such things casually, as though he were discussing props or lighting. But to the women and children on set, it was deeply uncomfortable and humiliating. No one dared to object, because Landon was not only the star, but also the director, the man who controlled everything on set. The more successful he became, the more authoritarian he grew. Karen Grassel, his on-screen wife, revealed that Landon refused to grant her a fair raise, paying her only $750 per episode, while male actors earned much more. When she protested, he mocked her, insulted her body in front of the crew, and even changed how he kissed her on camera to punish her. Grassel later described him as a sexist bully, a man who couldn't stand a woman demanding her fair share. Alison Arngrim, the actress who played the mischievous Nellie Oleson, also once said that Landon was both charming and dangerous, a man who carried within him both light and darkness. He drank, and he smoked incessantly 4 packs a day, even while filming with children. The smell of cigarettes lingered across the set, clinging to hair, costumes, and to the very image of the perfect family that Landon himself had so carefully built. In 1,970 seconds, Hollywood, where men ruled and women stayed silent, Michael Landon embodied both extremes, the angel on screen and the tyrant behind the camera. He controlled every shot, every line, every glance of his co-stars, as if the whole world were his personal film. Yet behind those gentle smiles lay a cold, commanding power that no one dared to challenge. And it was in those years caught between the dazzling light of fame and the shadows of his own nature that the image of America's father began to warp into something delusional. A man who could make an entire nation cry with stories of love and kindness was, in truth, making those closest to him live in fear and silence. And then, at last, the lights went out, and Michael Landon had to face the final act of his own story. In April 1991, during what seemed to be a harmless ski vacation in Utah, he suddenly collapsed from an excruciating pain. 3 days later, the doctor's diagnosis left all of Hollywood in stunned silence. Terminal pancreatic cancer, already spread to the liver. The news hit like a knife through the image of the invincible man America had once worshipped. Only a few weeks later, Landon appeared on The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, his face gaunt, his voice still strangely calm and warm. "I'm going to fight," he said. "I don't want pity. I just want to live the rest of my life as fully as I can." In that moment, audiences across the nation sat quietly before their screens. The man who had once taught them to believe in kindness was now teaching them how to face death. In his final months, he maintained an almost unbelievable strength. Landon continued to appear in public, giving interviews, sharing about his illness, and affirming his belief that life is worth living until the very last second. He kept working, kept editing scripts, kept visiting sets, as if death were merely a paused scene in a film. Colleagues said he never complained. He only smiled, joked, and sometimes sat silently for long stretches, staring out toward the sea. Landon tried everything: chemotherapy, acupuncture, vegetarian diets, herbal tonics, even bee pollen, which he once boasted to friends was his secret to staying young. But the disease advanced faster than any faith or hope could keep up with. His 10-acre ranch in Malibu, once filled with laughter, now echoed only with sea winds and the bitter smell of medicine. Each morning, he still rose early, brewed a cup of coffee, sat at his writing desk, and tried to finish a few lines of his unfinished scripts, but his hands trembled so badly he could no longer hold a pen. Those close to him recalled how he maintained a serene appearance despite unbearable pain. Melissa Gilbert, his on-screen daughter, estranged from him for years, eventually returned. They embraced for a long time, saying nothing, letting the silence speak of both love and remorse. "No matter what happened," she said, "he was still my father." That single sentence closed a wound that had been open for far too long. In his final days, Landon lay in a bed facing the ocean, where the sunsets blazed red each evening. Cindy, the wife who had once been the scandal of his life, never left his side. Friends, colleagues, and his 9 children came one by one to say goodbye. He smiled faintly and said, "I love you all, but now let me stay with your mother for a while." Those were his final words. On the 1st of July, 1991, at 1:20 p.m., Michael Landon took his last breath in his Malibu home at the age of 54. In that moment, Hollywood fell silent. News of his death spread across every front page. America's father has passed away. Thousands of condolence letters poured in, hundreds of articles revisited his legendary roles Bonanza, Little House on the Prairie, Highway to Heaven, like 3 epic chapters in the life of a man both magnificent and fragile. On television channels across America, old episodes began to air again, and everywhere, audiences sat silently before their screens as if bidding farewell to a family member. Hundreds of articles revisited his legendary roles Bonanza, Little House on the Prairie, Highway to Heaven, like 3 chapters in the life of a man both magnificent and fragile. His funeral was held at Hillside Memorial Park in Culver City. There was no grandeur, only the soft sound of piano music and the whisper of the wind. On his tombstone were engraved these simple words: "He seized life with joy. He gave to life generously. He leaves a legacy of love and laughter." The press called him the last man of television's purest era, but they did not ignore his darker sides, the scandals, the smoking habit, the temperamental nature. Some writers remarked that his death made audiences mourn the character, but question the man behind it. Yet millions chose to remember him in the gentlest way, as the father sitting on the wooden porch, teaching his children to believe in goodness. And perhaps it is that very paradox that keeps Michael Landon alive in memory. A man both saintly and flawed, loved and judged in equal measure, but above all someone who lived every single day as if performing his final scene before stepping off the stage forever. Today, the house where Michael Landon took his last breath still stands vast, silent, and heavy with memories. Nestled on the rolling hills of Malibu, the nearly 10-acre estate was once his family's paradise, a turquoise pool reflecting the California sky, empty horse stables where hoofbeats once echoed, and a lavender garden that still blooms purple every summer. Landon once called it the House of Light, a place where he believed his children would grow up surrounded by freedom and ocean air. But when he was gone, that light seemed to fade too, leaving behind an endless stillness. The mansion, built in the style of the Spanish colonial revival, stands with deep red roof tiles, ivory white walls, and arched doorways facing the Pacific. In the mornings, sunlight filters through the salty mist, glimmering on oak pillars and cool stone floors, the same light that once made him say, "It helps me believe I'm still alive." On the porch, the old wooden table where he used to write scripts still sits, and the rocking chair creaks softly whenever the wind passes, as if still waiting for its owner to return. From a distance, the house remains breathtakingly beautiful, but the closer one gets, the heavier the silence feels, a quiet that words cannot quite name. For Landon, this was not merely a place to live, but the final refuge of a soul longing for forgiveness. A fortress disguised as paradise, where the man who once made America believe in goodness quietly confronted the darkness within himself. After his death, The mansion was left untouched for many years. Cindy, his widow, said she never had the courage to move out. Every doorway, every scent of wood, still carries his presence, she shared. The living room where Landon used to write still holds an unfinished page, the last word scrawled in handwriting that faltered like a fading breath. The upstairs bedroom where he passed away remains sealed, its lights never turned on, as if the house itself is still mourning the man who once filled it with life. In the years that followed, the ranch quietly became a place of silent pilgrimage. Fans of Little House on the Prairie would sneak up to the black iron gates and leave white daisies, Landon's favorite flower. They didn't speak. They simply stood there, looking through the fence, where the glass windows still reflected the same blue ocean seen so often on screen. One man who had worked with Landon once said, "Some afternoons, I'd drive by and see the sunlight spilling across the second-floor window, and I could swear he was still sitting there, pen in hand, writing a story he never got to finish." By 2018, Cindy Landon decided to put the mansion up for sale, the starting price, $18 million. Not because she wanted to forget, but because she knew that no one could truly live in a place where every corner was a memory. The house was gently renovated, keeping the original oak beams, the glass doors that opened to the ocean, and the porch where Landon used to drink beer after long shooting days. Outside, the grass had crept over the pathway, but the garden still bloomed with the lavender he planted back in the 1,980 seconds. The buyer's identity was never made public, only that it went to a young film producer who said he wanted to preserve Landon's spirit. But whoever the new owner may be, the house now belongs to memory. For fans, it's more than just a luxury seaside estate. It's an unmarked grave of a legend. On certain evenings, as the sunset spills across the Pacific, the glass windows of the house glow with a pale orange light, just like the closing frame of Highway to Heaven. And sometimes, people say that if you listen closely between the sound of the sea breeze and the crashing waves, you can still hear Michael Landon's voice, warm and deep and full of love, reciting that old line. Heaven isn't somewhere far away. It's right here, if you know how to look. That mansion caught between sea wind, sunlight, and nostalgia stands as the final proof of his life. A house once filled with laughter, now a monument to silence. Yet, in that silence, the light of Michael Landon has never gone out. And perhaps, to truly understand the man he was, we must return to where it all began, to the first shadows that darkened his childhood in Forest Hills, New York. His birth name was Eugene Maurice Orowitz, a long, melancholy name, as if destined for an uneasy life. His father, Eli Maurice Orowitz, was a Jewish advertising executive. His mother, Peggy O'Neill, was a beautiful but fragile Irish Catholic woman, delicate as glass. Their home was always full of noise, the clatter of breaking dishes, heavy sighs, and nights thick with the smell of alcohol. His parents fought like two lost souls, determined to punish each other. And young Eugene learned to stay silent. He once said, "Silence was the only way to survive." But even silence couldn't save him from the memory that haunted him forever, the day his mother walked into the ocean before his eyes. That day, the sky was clear, the waves calm, and Eugene was only 10. His mother smiled and said she wanted to go for a swim. Then she drifted farther and farther, until she was gone. Eugene plunged into the freezing water, panicked, and only remembered the feeling of dragging that cold, lifeless hand back above the surface. "If I'd let go," he later said, "we both would have died." That was the first time Michael Landon faced death, and perhaps the first time he understood what absolute loneliness truly meant. The family moved to New Jersey, but the storms inside his mother never calmed. Eugene grew up introverted, sensitive, and proud. He excelled in sports, especially the javelin, the one thing that made him feel like he could fly. His skill earned him a scholarship to the University of Southern California, but fate would not let him rest. A shoulder injury ended his athletic dreams. When the javelin slipped from his grasp and hit the ground, Eugene knew his future had fallen with it, the sound of metal striking sand, echoing like something breaking inside him. He left school and drove to Los Angeles, the city of cheap dreams and endless lights. There, he changed his name to Michael Landon, a name that sounded stronger, braver. He worked any job he could find: delivery driver, dishwasher, gas station attendant. At night, he studied acting, rehearsing lines in his tiny rented room with its peeling walls and torn calendar. No one knew that behind his fierce determination was a heart that had never truly healed. His first acting break came with the horror film I Was a Teenage Werewolf, 1957. With his wild hair and haunted eyes, Landon both frightened and moved audiences. From there, he began to climb, and then to soar with Bonanza. Yet, deep down, the boy named Eugene never disappeared. He merely hid behind the roles he played: the devoted son, the ideal father, the loyal husband, as if reenacting the life he himself had never known. Michael Landon's career reached its peak with Little House on the Prairie, the story of a small family on the vast American frontier. The show was the dream he built for himself: a world with a gentle mother, obedient children, and a father who always knew right from wrong. But in truth, Little House was more than just a television series. It was a prescription he wrote for his own soul. In every frame, you could see a man trying to rewrite his broken childhood with scenes of warmth, kindness, and humanity. Behind the camera, he was described as a workaholic, obsessive, perfectionist to the point of madness. Landon wrote, directed, and edited nearly every episode himself, so much that some joked he wanted to control even God. But for him, control was the only way to keep things from falling apart, something he'd been powerless to do as a boy. Fame never changed his simplicity. Landon wore old shirts, drove himself to set, and ate with the crew. Yet beneath that, modesty was a core of steel discipline. He couldn't stand phoniness and despised anyone who acted just for money. "If you don't believe what you're saying," he once said, "the audience won't believe it either." His childhood had taught him what it felt like to be abandoned. And perhaps because of that, he spent the rest of his life trying to save others. He gave to charity quietly. No foundations, no publicity. In the 1,970 seconds, when Bonanza and Little House had made him a national star, Landon began sending anonymous donations to organizations helping abused children, depression clinics, and cancer hospitals. No one knew who the donor was, only that the envelopes were signed with a curious mark, ML, for life. He loathed the grandstanding of Hollywood galas. Instead of posing beside oversized checks, Landon preferred to show up quietly, place a hand on someone's shoulder, and leave. "If someone needs help," he said, "they don't need to know who I am. They just need to know someone out there is thinking of them." When he made Highway to Heaven, Landon wasn't just portraying an angel, he became one. He used his own money to produce episodes about the disabled, the homeless, the forgotten stories. The networks called too depressing for ratings. But to him, those were the stories that made people remember their humanity. "If just one child out there watches my show and feels seen," he said, "then that's enough." On set, he treated the child actors like his own. Filming always stopped at 6 so the kids could go home, and during night shoots, he read them bedtime stories himself. Melissa Gilbert recalled, "He was strict, but kind. When he called me, my little girl, everyone on set believed it wasn't acting." Landon never knew how to stop. He worked as though chased by an unseen wind. Friends said he couldn't stand emptiness, that when he wasn't filming, he painted, repaired the house, or wrote new scripts just to keep his mind busy. "I hate silence," he admitted. "In silence, I can hear my mother crying." The Malibu house that later became the place of his death had once been his simplest dream, a home filled with sea wind, sunlight, and children's laughter. He planted lavender around the porch, because it reminded him of his mother's perfume. At night, after everyone was asleep, he would sit outside with a beer, gazing at the ocean. Perhaps those were the only moments when he truly felt at peace. Yet, even when happiness was within reach, Michael Landon remained a survivor, a man who feared losing everything overnight. The boy who once pulled his mother from the water still lived within him, reaching out through an ocean of memories no one else could see. People often said, Michael Landon taught us to believe in goodness. But if you looked closer, you'd realize his stories weren't moral lessons. They were confessions wrapped in light. He never told tales of perfection. He told stories of people who stumbled, failed, and still chose to love, because he was one of them. When he died in 1991, a note was found in his office, scribbled hastily on a piece of paper. Don't let the pain make you cruel. Perhaps it was meant for himself, and for anyone who had ever been lost. Michael Landon was no saint. He was a man of contradictions, warm yet impulsive, kind yet stubborn, good-hearted yet unable to save himself. And maybe that's what made him real. A man once swallowed by darkness, who still chose to live like a light. And though those lights have long gone out, his films still glow each time someone turns on the TV at night, hears the banjo opening of Little House on the Prairie, and sees that familiar father, gentle, quiet, and with eyes that burn softly like fire. They say light cannot exist without darkness, and perhaps Michael Landon was the most beautiful proof of that truth. Michael Landon left behind a cinematic legacy that still moves the world to tears, stories of faith, family, and compassion that continue to live on through time. Yet behind that light was a man full of contradictions, constantly wrestling with the darkness inside himself. Maybe that is the true tragedy of those we call legends, trading freedom for fame, peace for immortality. What do you think? Can light stay bright when it costs a soul to keep it burning? And if this story made you reflect, don't forget to leave a comment and subscribe. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this journey.